He saved the Apache chief's daughter. What came next shocked the whole valley. The morning sun painted the Arizona Valley in shades of gold and amber, casting long shadows across the desert floor. Jack Morrison adjusted his worn leather hat and squinted against the brightness as he guided his horse along the familiar trail. For 3 years, he had ridden this same path between the small frontier town of Cedar Ridge and the Apache reservation, carrying supplies and messages as part of his work with the territorial government. Jack had always prided himself on understanding people, regardless of their background. Unlike many settlers who viewed the Apache with suspicion and fear, he had taken time to learn their customs and language. His respectful approach had earned him a reputation as one of the few white men the tribal leaders would speak with directly. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would encounter on this particular morning. As Jack rounded a bend near Willow Creek, the sound of rushing water filled his ears. The spring snowmelt had swollen the normally gentle stream into a raging torrent. He dismounted to water his horse when he heard something that made his blood run cold. A woman's scream, barely audible above the roar of the current. He scanned the churning waters and spotted her immediately. A young Apache woman was trapped on a fallen log in the middle of the creek, the swift current threatening to sweep her away at any moment. Her traditional dress was soaked through, and her long black hair whipped around her face as she struggled to maintain her grip on the slippery bark. Without hesitation, Jack kicked off his boots and dove into the icy water. The current was stronger than he had anticipated, and it took all his strength to fight his way toward the stranded woman. When he finally reached her, he could see the fear in her dark eyes, but also something else, a fierce determination that reminded him why the Apache were known as warriors. "Hold on to me," he shouted over the noise of the water, switching to the Apache language he had worked so hard to master. "I will get you to shore." She nodded and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. Together they fought against the current, Jack using every ounce of his strength to angle them toward the bank. Several times, the rushing water threatened to pull them under, but somehow they managed to reach the muddy shore, both gasping and shivering from the cold. As they lay on the bank, catching their breath, Jack got his first good look at the woman he had saved. She was younger than he had initially thought, probably in her early 20s, with striking features and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Her clothing, though simple, was beautifully crafted with intricate beadwork that spoke of high status within the tribe. "Thank you," she said in perfect English, surprising him. "I am Ayana, daughter of Chief Nolnish." Jack felt his heart skip a beat. Chief Nolnish was one of the most respected leaders in the territory, known for his wisdom and his efforts to maintain peace between his people and the growing number of settlers. Saving his daughter was no small matter. "I am Jack Morrison," he replied, helping her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" Ayana shook her head, wringing water from her hair. "Only my pride. I was gathering medicinal plants by the creek when the ground gave way beneath me. The water was much deeper than I expected." As they retrieved Jack's boots and prepared to leave, Ayana studied him with curious eyes. "You speak our language well for a white man. Where did you learn?" "From anyone willing to teach me," Jack answered honestly. "I believe understanding leads to peace." Something in his words seemed to resonate with her, and she smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her since the rescue. "My father would like to meet you, Jack Morrison. Would you come with me to our camp?" The request was both an honor and a potential complication. While Jack had dealt with Apache leaders before, being personally invited to their camp by the chief's daughter was unprecedented. Still, he could hardly refuse after what had just happened. The Apache camp was larger than Jack had expected, with dozens of traditional dwellings arranged in careful patterns among the desert vegetation. As they approached, Jack noticed how the normal activity of daily life seemed to pause. Men stopped their work on weapons and tools, women looked up from their weaving, and children peeked out from behind their mothers' skirts. Word of Ayana's rescue had clearly traveled quickly. Chief Nolnish emerged from his dwelling, a distinguished man with graying hair and eyes that held both wisdom and wariness. He embraced his daughter tightly before turning his attention to Jack. "My daughter tells me you risked your life to save hers," the chief said in English, his voice deep and measured. "Such courage deserves recognition." What happened next surprised everyone present, including Jack. Instead of offering the expected gift of horses or weapons, Chief Nolnish did something that had never occurred in the valley's recorded history. He removed a sacred eagle feather from his own headdress and placed it in Jack's hat. "You are now considered a brother to our tribe," the chief announced, his words carrying across the silent camp. "You will always have a place at our fire and a voice in our councils." The implications of this gesture rippled through both communities like stones thrown into still water. In Cedar Ridge, some settlers viewed Jack's new status with suspicion, wondering if he could still represent their interests fairly. Others saw it as an opportunity for better relations with their Apache neighbors, but it was Ayanna who provided the most surprising reaction of all. Over the following weeks, she began appearing regularly in town, not as an outsider seeking trade, but as someone genuinely interested in building bridges between the two communities. She learned English customs with the same dedication Jack had shown in learning Apache ways, and soon she was helping to translate not just words, but cultural misunderstandings. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. Settlers who had once crossed the street to avoid Apache visitors found themselves engaging in friendly conversations. Apache families began bringing their children to town events, and several intermarriage agreements were discussed, something that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. Jack found himself at the center of these changes, but increasingly, he realized that Ayanna was the true catalyst. Her intelligence, warmth, and determination were winning over hearts on both sides of the cultural divide. More importantly, at least to Jack, he was finding it increasingly difficult to concentrate on anything else when she was around. The moment of truth came during the harvest celebration, when both communities gathered together for the first joint festival in the valley's history. As Jack watched Ayanna teaching Apache dances to a group of settler children, he realized that what had begun as a simple rescue had grown into something much more profound. "She cares for you too, you know," Chief Nolish said quietly, appearing beside Jack as they watched the festivities. "I would never presume," Jack began, but the chief held up a hand. "My daughter is not a woman who hides her feelings well," the chief said with a slight smile. "The question is what you intend to do about it." That evening, as the celebration wound down and families began heading home, Jack found himself walking with Ayanna along the same creek where they had first met. The water ran calm and clear now, a gentle stream that reflected the stars above. "Do you ever regret that morning?" Ayanna asked suddenly, her voice soft in the darkness. "Regret saving you?" Jack replied, genuinely confused. "Never. Not the saving," she clarified, stopping to face him, "but everything that came after. Your life became much more complicated because of me." Jack reached out and took her hand, feeling the calluses from her work and the strength that had helped her survive. "In the creek, complicated, yes, but also richer, fuller, more meaningful than I ever imagined it could be." When he kissed her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, as if everything that had happened had been leading to this moment. And perhaps it had. Their wedding 6 months later was attended by both communities, with Chief Nolish performing the Apache ceremony and the town preacher conducting the Christian service. It was a celebration that marked not just the union of two people, but the birth of a new kind of community in the valley. Years later, as Jack and Ayanna raised their children in a world where Apache and settler families shared meals, celebrations, and sorrows, people would often ask Jack about that morning by the creek. They wanted to know if he had any idea what he was setting in motion when he dove into those rushing waters. The truth was simpler and more complex than anyone expected. He had seen someone in trouble and acted without thinking about consequences or complications. But sometimes, Jack realized, the most profound changes in life come not from grand plans or careful calculations, but from simple acts of human decency performed without expectation of reward. The valley had indeed been shocked by what followed his rescue of the Apache chief's daughter, but as Jack looked around at the thriving, integrated community they had all built together, he knew it was the best kind of shock imaginable, the shock of discovering that understanding and love could triumph over fear and prejudice, one brave act at a time.